The sun hasn't risen yet, but Marcus Valerius is already awake. Not because of discipline, not because of duty, but because the cold has seeped through his thin woolen blanket and deep into his bones. He lies there in the darkness of the barracks, listening to the snores of 30 other men packed into a room built for 20. Somewhere in the corner, a man coughs a wet, rattling sound that's been going on for weeks. No one talks about it. No one talks about a lot of things when you're a Roman soldier. This is not the story of a centurion, not a general, not even a decorated legionnaire returning home with tales of glory. This is the story of an immunis a soldier with a specialty, yes, but one so mundane, so invisible to history, that his existence has been scrubbed from every marble monument and triumphal arch. Marcus is Librarius Castrensis a military clerk. He is a man who serves Rome not with a gladius, but with a stylus. His war is fought on wax tablets, not on battlefields. And this is his day, a day the empire never bothered to remember. It is the spring of 174 AD. The Roman Empire stretches from the mist-covered hills of Britannia to the sun-scorched deserts of Mesopotamia. On the throne sits the philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius, writing his meditations while his legions bleed on the frontiers. The Marcomannic Wars rage along the Danube as barbarian tribes press against the empire's northern edge like wolves testing a fence. Marcus Valerius is stationed at a fort near Carnuntum in what is now Austria. He is 28 years old. He has served for 9 years. He has 11 more to go before he earns his discharge, his plot of land, and his pension. 11 more years of this. The first pale light of dawn creeps through the narrow window slits. Around him, men begin to stir. They don't leap from their beds with military precision, like the stories say. They groan. They stretch aching backs. They mutter curses under their breath. These are not the marble statues you see in museums. These are men with rotting teeth, scarred hands, and feet mangled by decades of marching. Men who smell of sweat, leather, and the sour odor of too many bodies in too small a space. Marcus swings his legs off the wooden bunk. His feet touch the cold stone floor. He reaches for his tunic, the same one he's worn for 3 days now. Laundry is a luxury. Water is rationed. The Danube flows just beyond the fort walls, but drinking from it means risking the flux, the bloody sickness that empties a man from both ends until there's nothing left but a husk. He pulls on his caligae the heavy-soled sandals that have marched across half the known world. His feet are already blistered from yesterday. Today will add new ones. He wraps the leather straps carefully, knowing that a single blister in the wrong place can become infected, can mean fever, can mean death. Soldiers die from infected blisters more often than they die from barbarian swords. Nobody talks about that either. Outside, the fort is coming to life. The Principia the headquarters building stands at the center, imposing and cold. Smoke rises from the kitchens where the morning grain is being boiled into a gray, tasteless porridge. The smell of it turns Marcus's stomach, but he'll eat it anyway. He always does. He lines up with the other soldiers, a wooden bowl in hand, and receives his scoop of gray mush. He eats it standing, scraping the bowl clean. Food is fuel, nothing more. He has work to do. He makes his way across the muddy courtyard. The spring thaw has turned the ground into a sucking morass that clings to everything. His caligae squelch with each step. A group of younger soldiers Tyrone's Fresh recruits practice formations in the yard, their movements clumsy and uncertain. A centurion screams at them, his voice raw from years of screaming. The vine stick in his hand cracks across the back of a boy who moved too slow. The boy doesn't cry out. He's learning. Marcus doesn't watch. He's seen it 1,000 times. He was that boy once. He enters the Principia nodding to the guard at the door, a man named Gaius, who lost 2 fingers to frostbite during the last winter campaign. The interior is dim, lit by oil lamps that smoke and sputter. The smell of burning fat and stale sweat hangs in the air. Along the walls, wooden shelves sag under the weight of wax tablets, papyrus scrolls, wooden tags, and clay seals. This is Marcus's world. This is his war. His station is a small wooden desk in the corner. away from the main hall, where the tribune conducts official business. A pile of tablets waits for him. Inventory reports, grain allocations, equipment requisitions, discharge papers, disciplinary records. Every sword, every shield, every nail and horseshoe in this fort must be counted, recorded, and verified. The empire runs on documents, not just legions. But history only remembers the legions. Marcus sits down. The stool is hard, the wood worn smooth by the backsides of a dozen clerks before him. He picks up his stylus, a bronze rod with a pointed end for writing and a flat end for erasing. The wax tablet before him is scarred with the ghosts of 1,000 previous entries, the surface never quite smooth no matter how many times you scrape it clean. The first tablet of the day is a report from the quartermaster. 23 javelins lost during training. 6 shields cracked beyond repair. 1 centurion requesting a new helmet after his was stolen, probably sold for wine money. Marcus thinks, but he doesn't write that part. He just copies the information in neat, careful letters. Latin is his native tongue, but writing it, truly writing it, with proper grammar and spelling, that's a skill that took him years to learn. Most soldiers are illiterate. Most will never read a single word in their entire lives. That's why Marcus is here. That's why he's an asterisk immunis asterisk, exempt from the heavy labor and sentry duty that breaks other men's bodies. He's exempt from digging latrines, hauling stones, and standing guard for hours in the freezing rain. But exemption is not freedom. It's just a different kind of cage. A cage made of ink and wax. The hours pass slowly. The sounds of the fort become a dull, distant roar. Outside, the sun climbs higher. Inside, the light barely changes. Marcus's hand cramps around the stylus. His back aches from hunching over the desk. He works through the morning without a break, documenting the mundane machinery of empire. At some point, a slave brings him a cup of asterisk POSC a asterisk dash watered dash down vinegar wine, the standard drink of soldiers. It tastes like metal and regret. He drinks it anyway. It's wet, and it's all he'll get until evening. Around midday, a commotion erupts in the courtyard. Marcus can hear shouting, the clash of wood on wood. Training exercises, probably. Or a fight. Soldiers fight over everything: dice games, insults, perceived slights, women who don't exist outside their imaginations. The centurions break it up with their vine sticks and their fists. Order is restored. The machine continues. Marcus doesn't go outside to watch. He has 73 more tablets to process before sunset. Each entry is a tiny piece of a man's life. A request for new sandals for a soldier whose feet are rubbed raw. A deduction of pay for a man caught sleeping on watch. A record of 10 lashes for insubordination. He writes it all down, his face a neutral mask. He is the empire's memory, a living ledger of its daily grind. He records the lifeblood of the legion, but he feels none of its pulse. He is a ghost in the machine. Sometime in the early afternoon, the tribune summons him. Marcus stands, stretches his protesting spine, and makes his way to the main hall. Tribune Cassius Longinus sits behind a heavy wooden table, maps spread out before him. He's younger than Marcus, perhaps 30, with the smooth hands of a man born into the equestrian class. He's never slept in a barracks. He's never eaten gray porridge from a wooden bowl. He's never had to choose between warm feet and warm food. His armor is polished, his cloak is fine wool, and his face holds the easy confidence of command. Cassius doesn't look up when Marcus approaches. He points a manicured finger at a section of the map. "Valeriers," he says, his voice crisp. "The supply convoy from Vindobona is overdue by 2 days. I need the manifests from the last 3 shipments. Compare the grain allocations. I want to know exactly what we stand to lose if they've been hit." Marcus nods. "Yes, Tribune." He retrieves the heavy papyrus scrolls from a locked chest. He unrolls them carefully on a side table. Papyrus is expensive, reserved for important records. He scans the columns of figures, his eyes moving swiftly. He's good at this. He finds the data, cross-references the dates, and begins his calculations on a fresh wax tablet. How much barley? How much wheat? How many amphorae of wine and oil? The numbers swim before his eyes, but he forces them into order. This is his battlefield. A lost convoy could mean short rations, which means angry soldiers. Angry soldiers mean trouble. Everything in the Roman army, from a glorious victory to a bloody mutiny, begins with logistics. It begins with numbers on a page. He works for nearly an hour, his brow furrowed in concentration. The tribune watches him, tapping his finger on the table. Finally, Marcus presents his findings. Tribune, if the convoy is lost, we will be short approximately 15% of our grain ration for the next month. Our reserve oil will last 20 days. Cassius frowns. And the cavalry's fodder? Depleted in 10 days, sir, Marcus replies, his voice flat. He doesn't need to check his notes for that. He knows the numbers. He always knows the numbers. The tribune dismisses him with a wave. Very well. Get back to your duties. Marcus returns to his desk in the corner. He picks up his stylus. The next tablet is a death certificate. A soldier named Titus from the 3rd cohort. Cause of death, fever. Not a glorious end on the battlefield, just a slow, miserable wasting away in the infirmary. Marcus knew him slightly. A quiet man who was good at carving little wooden animals. Marcus carefully records the name, cohort, and date. He scrapes the wax clean, erasing Titus from the army's rolls. Another man scrub it from history. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Marcus finishes his last tablet for the day. He stacks them neatly for the senior clerk to review. His hand is stiff, his eyes burn, and his head throbs with a dull ache. He has spent his entire day documenting the lives of others, but has he truly lived his own? He walks out of the Principia and into the cool evening air. The day's work is done. The evening meal will be more porridge, perhaps with a piece of hard bread if they are lucky. Then, a few hours of darkness before he returns to the cold barracks, to the snoring men and the coughing, to lie awake and wait for another day exactly like this one. A day of counting, of writing, of being the invisible cog that keeps the great Roman war machine turning. A day the poets will never sing about, the sculptors will never carve, and the emperors will never know. This is the life of Marcus Valerius, the military clerk. And tomorrow, he will wake up and do it all over again. Thank you for watching. If you're fascinated by the unseen lives that powered history, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the shadows. See you next time. Ever dream of joining the Roman legions? Marching for glory, conquering new lands, the thrill of battle? Well, let me tell you about a different kind of soldier. My name is Marcus, and I fight my wars not with a gladius, but with a stylus and a mountain of papyrus. Forget the gleaming armor and heroic charges you see on monuments. My reality is a cramped, damp office in a forgotten fort at the very edge of the empire, here in dreary Britannia. The sun rarely makes an appearance. Instead, a persistent chilling mist seeps into everything: my cloak, my scrolls, and my bones. My day begins long before dawn, not with the blast of a horn for battle practice, but with the scratching of my pen. I am a legionary clerk, an immunis, excused from the back-breaking labor of the other soldiers. But trust me, my work is just as relentless. My main job? The daily strength report. Every morning, I have to account for every single man in this cohort. Who's on duty? Who's sick? Who's been assigned to the latrine detail? Who didn't make it back from patrol? Every name is a life, a story. But to Rome, they are just numbers on a ledger. I dip my stylus into the inkpot, the dark liquid like the murky water of the nearby bog, and I write. Gaius Valerius, 2nd cohort, 3rd maniple, fever. Another one down. The infirmary is always full. The dampness here breeds sickness faster than we can brew remedies. Then there are the supply inventories. Grain, wine, oil, leather for sandals, iron for nails. Every single item that comes into this fort has to be counted, recorded, and reported. Did the latest shipment from Londinium arrive short? You bet it did. Now I have to draft a complaint, a multi-copy document that will take weeks to travel down the muddy roads, only to get lost in a bureaucratic maze in some governor's office. By the time anyone reads it, we'll be rationing our bread and using rancid oil in our lamps. My commander, Centurion Flaccus, is a man carved from granite and in patience. He was a frontline fighter, a real soldier's soldier. He sees me, with my ink-stained fingers and hunched back, as something less than a man. Marcus. He'll bellow, bursting into my office without knocking. The payroll accounts. Are they balanced? The emperor expects his legions to be efficient, not a charity for scribblers. I never point out that without my scribbling, he and his men wouldn't get paid, fed, or armed. I just nod to say, "Yes, Centurion," and try to make my handwriting even neater. The other soldiers, they're a mixed bunch. Most of them are provincials, Gauls, Thracians, Iberians. They joined for the promise of citizenship after 25 years of service. A lifetime. They see me, and they see a soft life. They spend their days digging ditches, hauling stone, and standing guard in the freezing rain. At night, they huddle around fires, gambling with dice made from animal bone, telling crude jokes, and talking about the homes they miss. Sometimes, a young recruit named Lucius comes to my office. He's from a small village in Hispania, and he's desperately homesick. He wants me to write a letter for him to his mother. He can't read or write, like most of them. So I sit, and he dictates. He tells her about the green hills, which he says are nothing like the hills back home. He tells her he's strong and brave, but his voice cracks. He asks about his sister's wedding, about the olive harvest. I write it all down, adding a few flourishes to make him sound more heroic than he feels. In these moments, my job feels important. I am the bridge between these forgotten men and the world they left behind. But those moments are rare. More often, my days are filled with the grim realities of this place. Yesterday, a patrol returned, carrying 2 of their own on makeshift stretchers. An ambush by the local tribes. I had to update the roster. Deceased. I wrote next to 2 names I had just seen laughing over a game of dice a few days ago. I then had to draft the official report of the incident using cold, detached language. Hostile contact, casualties sustained, strategic withdrawal. There's no room for grief in a Roman military report. Later, I had to process the deceased soldier's effects. A small wooden bird, crudely carved. A worn-out coin from a distant province. A letter, sealed and never sent. I logged each item. These tiny remnants of a life become state property, to be cataloged and eventually disposed of. It's the ugliest part of my job, erasing a man from the official record, piece by piece, until it's like he was never here. Sometimes, late at night, when the only sound is the howling wind and the distant cry of a wolf, I look at the map on my wall. I trace the roads leading back to Italy, back to Rome. I came from a family of merchants. I was supposed to take over my father's business, but I was ambitious. I wanted to see the world, to be part of the great Roman machine. I thought the army was the fastest way to gain status, to earn a respectable retirement. Now I'm a cog in that machine, and it's grinding me down. The glory of Rome feels very far away from this leaky wooden fort. The emperor's grand speeches about civilizing the world sound hollow when you dealing with a dysentery outbreak or counting out hobnails for boots that will march through endless mud. This isn't a story of heroes. There are no epic battles here. Just a slow, grinding war against the wilderness, against sickness, against boredom, and against the crushing weight of an empire that demands everything and gives back so little. My name is Marcus, and this is my service. I keep the records. I count the dead. I write the letters home. And every day, I wonder if anyone, in the grand scheme of Rome, will ever count me. Thanks for watching. If you found this glimpse into the less glamorous side of Roman life interesting, please like this video and subscribe for more stories from history. See you next time. They're all long, Marcus replies. At least you don't have to stand watch in the cold. No, I just ruin my eyes by lamplight and cripple. My handwriting reports no one reads. Lucius grins. You chose the stylus, brother. I chose the sword. And which of us will live longer? Lucius doesn't answer. They both know the answer. Clerks don't die in battle. They die of bad water, bad food, disease, accidents, infected wounds from splinters or falls. Death doesn't discriminate. It just comes quieter for some. Marcus lies back on his bunk and closes his eyes. Tomorrow will be the same as today, and the day after that, and the day after that, for 11 more years. Unless the barbarians break through. Unless plague sweeps the fort. Unless the empire decides it needs bodies for a new campaign, and immunist status be damned. He thinks about home. A village near Rome he hasn't seen in 9 years. His mother is probably dead by now. His sister married to some farmer, raising children who will never know their uncle. When Marcus enlisted, he thought he was buying glory, citizenship, a better life. Instead, he bought routine, boredom punctuated by terror, and paperwork. So much paperwork. The weeks pass. Spring turns to early summer. The overdue supply caravan finally arrives, half its wagons lost to bandits, the rest barely filled. Rationing begins. Tempers flare. A soldier is flogged for stealing bread. Another is executed for desertion after being caught 3 miles from the fort, heading west toward Gaul. The centurion who catches him is promoted. The machine continues. Marcus writes it all down. Every flogging, every execution, every name struck from the rolls. The empire must have its records. History must be preserved, even if that history is just a list of broken men and stolen bread. One morning in late June, the Tribune summons all officers and senior staff. Marcus is included, not because he's important, but because someone needs to take notes. They gather in the Principia, crowding around the map table. The Tribune looks grim. New orders from the legate, he announces. The Marcomanni are massing north of the river. The emperor himself is marching to join the campaign. We move out in 4 days. A murmur runs through the assembled men. Not excitement, not fear, just resignation. Here we go again. The Tribune continues. Full campaign load. 8 days rations. We'll be establishing a forward camp 20 miles north, then pushing deeper into barbarian territory. The legate expects this to be a decisive engagement. Marcus writes furiously, trying to capture every detail. Campaign load means each soldier will carry 60 pounds of equipment plus weapons. 8 days rations means they'll be foraging or starving after that. Forward camp means digging ditches and building palisades while barbarian scouts watch from the trees. Decisive engagement means a lot of men are going to die. Valerius, the Tribune says, looking directly at him. You'll remain with the baggage train. I need someone to maintain records during the march. Inventory, casualties, correspondence, all of it. Yes, sir, Marcus replies. He feels a strange mix of relief and shame. Relief because he won't be in the front lines. Shame because every other man here will be. The meeting ends. The officers disperse. Marcus returns to his desk and begins drafting the movement orders. Names, units, equipment lists. Everything must be documented. The empire demands it. 4 days later, the legion marches out. 3,000 men, 400 horses, 100 wagons. The column stretches for over a mile. At the front, the cavalry scouts range ahead, watching for ambush. Behind them, the heavy infantry Principes and Hastati men in mail and iron, carrying shields that weigh 15 pounds and javelins that can punch through bone. Then the engineers, the artillery, the baggage train. And at the very back, protected by a rear guard, the clerks and the wounded and the equipment that keeps the killing machine running. Marcus walks beside a wagon loaded with wax tablets, papyrus, and ink. His pack is lighter than a legionnaire's, but his feet hurt just the same. The road is dry and dusty. By midday, every man is covered in a fine gray powder that works its way into every crease, every fold of clothing. It gets in your mouth, your eyes, your lungs. Men cough and spit and curse. They march for 8 hours. Rest for 10 minutes every hour. Drink from whatever stream or well they pass. Pray it doesn't give them the flux. Marcus watches the landscape roll by forests and meadows and distant mountains where the barbarians wait. This land is beautiful in a wild, untamed way. But beauty means nothing when you're waiting for an arrow to sprout from your throat. At nightfall, they make camp. The legionaries work with brutal efficiency, digging a ditch, erecting a palisade, setting up tents in precise rows. Within 3 hours, a fortified camp has materialized from nothing. A small city of leather and wood and iron discipline. Marcus sets up his workspace in a command tent, lighting oil lamps as darkness falls. The work begins immediately. Casualty reports 3 men injured during the march, 1 with a twisted ankle, 1 with heat stroke, 1 gored by a panicked ox. Equipment losses 2 wagons with broken axles, one abandoned and burned. Ration consumption within expected parameters. Marcus writes it all down, his stylus moving across the wax by lamplight. Outside, men cook their evening meals over small fires. The smell of roasting grain and boiled beans drifts through the camp. Somewhere, someone plays a flute, a melancholy tune that speaks of home and things lost. No one tells them to stop. The next morning, they march again. And the next, and the next. Each day the same wake before dawn, break camp, march, make camp, record, sleep, repeat. The landscape grows wilder, the forests thicker, the roads narrower. They are entering barbarian territory now, land where Rome's authority exists only at the point of a gladius. On the 6th day, the scouts return with news. Enemy movements ahead. A large force, maybe 2,000 warriors, gathering near a river ford. The tribune calls a war council. Marcus takes notes, his hand shaking slightly, not from fear exactly, but from the knowledge that what he writes today will become history. If they survive, the decision is made. Engage at dawn tomorrow. The legion will form up in standard battle order, heavy infantry in the center, cavalry on the flanks, archers behind. The baggage train will remain in the fortified camp, protected by a skeleton crew. Marcus will stay with the baggage. That night, the camp is tense. Men check their weapons, sharpen blades, pray to gods old and new. Some write letters they'll never send. Others just sit in silence, staring at the fires. Marcus sits in his tent, staring at a blank wax tablet, wondering what words could possibly capture this moment. In the end, he writes nothing. Some moments exist beyond documentation. Dawn comes cold and gray. The legion forms up outside the camp. Marcus watches from the palisade as 3,000 men arrange themselves into the killing formation that has conquered half the world. The sight is terrible and magnificent. Rows of shields, forests of spears, the red of cloaks, and the silver of iron. The eagle standard the Aquila shines in the weak morning light, carried by a man who will die before he lets it fall. The tribune raises his hand. A horn sounds. The legion begins to march. Marcus doesn't watch. He returns to his desk and begins preparing the casualty lists he knows he'll need to fill out. Names, ranks, causes of death. The familiar ritual that gives structure to chaos. Hours pass. From the distance, the sounds of battle drift back to the camp shouts. Screams, the clash of metal on metal, the thunder of hooves. Marcus writes. His hand is steady. This is his war. By mid-afternoon, the first wounded arrive. They come in wagons and on foot, bleeding, screaming, dying. The camp's medical tent fills immediately. The surgeon, a Greek named Alexios, enslaved 20 years ago and never freed, works with brutal efficiency. Amputating limbs, sewing wounds, administering poppy tears to those who won't survive and need a gentle death. Marcus inventories the wounded. 63 men, 17 critical, 8 dead on arrival. He writes each name carefully, knowing that these tablets will be the only proof these men ever existed. Their families will receive these names, if they're lucky. If the names make it back to Rome, if anyone bothers to send them. By evening, the legion returns. They've won. The barbarians scattered, their force broken. The legion has lost 93 men dead, over 200 wounded. A tactical victory, a strategic success. Rome advances. The machine continues. That night, Marcus works by lamplight, completing the casualty reports, the equipment losses, the inventory adjustments. His hand cramps, his eyes burn. But the work must be done. The Empire demands it. A shadow falls across his desk. He looks up. Sextus stands there, his face pale, his left arm wrapped in bloody bandages. "You made it," Marcus says. Sextus nods. "Barely. Took an axe to the shield. Broke my arm in 3 places." Alexios says I'm done. Medical discharge. Marcus doesn't know what to say. Discharge should be good news. But without his pension, without his land grant, Sextus will be a cripple with nothing. No family. No trade. Just a broken body and memories of things he'll wish he could forget. "I'm sorry," Marcus says. Sextus laughs bitterly. "Don't be. I'm alive." That's more than 93 others can say. He limps away into the darkness. Marcus watches him go, then returns to his tablets. There's always more work. There's always another name to write. The campaign continues for 3 more weeks. Skirmishes, ambushes, small victories, and smaller defeats. The legion pushes deeper into barbarian land, burning villages, taking slaves, enforcing peace through terror. Marcus documents it all. Every casualty, every captured weapon, every bushel of grain seized from terrified farmers who don't understand why Rome is destroying their world. He sees things he'll never write in the official records. Soldiers looting corpses, centurions executing prisoners, women and children herded into pens like animals, waiting to be sold in far-off markets. This is what empire looks like up close. Not marble and glory, blood and mud and cruelty. One night, sitting alone in his tent, Marcus realizes he's become numb to it. He records atrocities with the same dispassionate precision he uses for grain inventories. This is what he's become, a machine within the machine, converting human suffering into neat Latin script. He thinks about deserting, just walking away into the forests, disappearing. But where would he go? He's been a soldier for 9 years. He knows no other life. And the penalty for desertion is death, a death he's documented 100 times in his reports. So he stays. He writes. The machine continues. Eventually, the campaign ends. The emperor arrives, declares victory, and returns to Rome. The legion marches back to the fort at Carnuntum. The summer is over. Autumn is coming, and with it, the promise of another brutal winter. Marcus returns to his desk in the Principia. The pile of tablets waiting for him is even larger than before. Campaign reports to compile, promotions to record, discharges to process, the dead to be officially struck from the rolls. One tablet catches his attention. A discharge order for Sextus. Medical discharge, granted. Pension, half rate due to incomplete service. Land grant, waived due to medical discharge status. Marcus reads it 3 times, feeling something cold settle in his chest. After 16 years of service, Sextus will receive barely enough to survive, and no land. He'll likely end up begging on the streets of some provincial city, another broken veteran among thousands. Marcus could adjust the numbers. He has that power. He could record it as a full discharge, full pension, full land grant. The tribune would probably never notice. The bureaucracy is vast and chaotic. Errors happen. But errors also get clerks executed if they're discovered. Marcus sits there for a long time, stylus in hand, staring at the tablet. Finally, he writes the discharge exactly as ordered. Half pension, no land. He presses the stylus too hard, and the wax cracks. That night, he doesn't sleep. He lies in his bunk, listening to the familiar sounds of the barracks, and wonders what happened to the man he was 9 years ago. The man who believed in Rome, who believed in glory, who thought a stylus was mightier than a sword. Winter comes. The fort settles into its frozen routine. Men huddle around fires. Disease spreads through the close quarters. Marcus writes, documents, records, preserves. The empire demands it. One morning in December, Marcus is summoned to the tribune's office. Tribune Cassius sits behind his desk, looking older somehow. The campaigns have aged him. Valeriers, he says. I'm being reassigned. The legate is sending me to a posting in Syria. I leave in 2 weeks. Marcus nods. Congratulations, sir. The tribune waves the congratulations away. I'm recommending you for promotion. Junior administrative officer. It comes with a pay increase and better quarters. Marcus should feel something: gratitude, pride, satisfaction. Instead, he feels nothing. Imagine Rome, the heart of an empire, a city of marble and men, of legions and law. But away from the clamor of the Forum and the roar of the Colosseum, in the cool, dim halls of the Tabularium, sits a man you've never heard of. His name is Lucius Valerius Secundus, and for 20 years, his world has been papyrus, ink, and the endless rhythmic scratching of his stylus. This isn't a story of emperors or generals. It's the story of the man who wrote theirs. When Lucius first arrived in Rome from his provincial town, his heart beat with the pulse of the city itself. He was young, ambitious, and armed with a sharp mind and a talent for letters. Landing a position as a clerk, ***, was a dream come true. He was to be a cog in the magnificent machine of the Roman state, a keeper of its records, a guardian of its memory. His first day, he marveled at the sheer scale of it all. Scrolls stacked to the ceiling, containing everything from grain shipments from Egypt to the detailed ledgers of military campaigns in Britannia. He felt a profound sense of purpose. He wasn't just copying words. He was chronicling history as it happened. In those early years, Lucius was meticulous. His script was flawless, his summaries concise. He documented tax revenues that funded aqueducts, transcribed senatorial decrees that shaped the lives of millions, and recorded the names of soldiers who would never return home. He felt connected to the grand narrative of Rome. He'd hear whispers of political intrigue, of a new conquest on the frontier, and days later, the official, sanitized version would pass through his hands. He was an insider, privy to the empire's secrets, even if only as a silent observer. He took pride in his work, in the neat columns of figures and the elegant flow of his Latin. His superiors praised his diligence. He was reliable, invisible, and perfect for the job, but years began to blur. The ink that stained his fingers seemed to seep deeper into his very being. The seasons changed not by the weather, but by the cycles of tax collection and the annual military reports. The names and numbers started to lose their meaning. A famine in Gaul was just a column of reduced grain figures. A costly victory in Dacia was a list of expenses for siege equipment and funeral rites. The triumphs celebrated in the streets were, to him, a mountain of paperwork for logistics and spoils. The human stories behind the data, the faces of the people, faded into abstract entries on a scroll. He lived a quiet life. His small apartment in the Suburra was a world away from the grand villas of the Palatine Hill. He had few friends, most of them fellow clerks, who shared his quiet, ordered existence. Their conversations rarely strayed from office gossip or the quality of the latest shipment of Egyptian papyrus. He never married. The dedication his job demanded left little room for a personal life. He'd sometimes look out his window at the bustling street below, at families laughing, at merchants haggling, at lovers strolling hand in hand, and feel a pang of something he couldn't quite name. It was a life he was recording, but not one he was living. As Lucius entered his second decade of service, a subtle change occurred. The pride he once felt curdled into a quiet resignation. His ambition had long since evaporated, replaced by a monotonous routine. Get up, walk to the tabularium, copy, file, check, walk home, sleep, repeat. He started to feel like a ghost in the machine he so admired. The empire, in all its power and glory, was an abstraction. His reality was the weight of a wooden scroll case, the smell of old parchment, and the cramp in his hand. He was losing himself, his own identity dissolving into the records he kept. He was no longer Lucius Valerius Secundus. He was simply a scribe, an extension of the state's memory. One day, an old friend from his hometown visited Rome. He was a merchant, his face weathered by the sun and sea, his eyes full of stories of distant lands and strange customs. He looked at Lucius, at his pale skin and ink-stained hands, and asked, "Lucius, what have you seen? What have you done in this great city?" And for the first time, Lucius had no answer. He had seen the empire on paper. He had documented the lives of thousands, the rise and fall of fortunes, the birth and death of policies. But he had done nothing. He had lived vicariously through his stylus, a spectator to his own life. The realization settled upon him not with a crash, but with a quiet, hollow ache. Finally, after 20 years, the day of his retirement came. There was no grand ceremony, no golden handshake. His supervisor, a man who had replaced another man Lucius barely remembered, offered a few perfunctory words of thanks. He was given a small pension, enough to live on, and a certificate of service, another piece of paper to add to a lifetime of them. He packed his few belongings from his desk, the styluses worn smooth by his grip, a small inkwell, and a single blank scroll he had kept for years, though he no longer knew why. As he walked out of the tabularium for the last time, the Roman sun felt strangely foreign on his face. The city was as loud and vibrant as ever, but he felt completely detached from it. He was a free man, yet he had no idea what to do with his freedom. He had spent 2 decades recording the actions of others, and now he had no actions of his own to take. Lucius retired to a small cottage outside the city, the very one his pension could afford. his days were quiet. He tended a small garden, the feeling of soil on his hands a strange and welcome sensation. He watched the seasons change for real, marked by the budding of flowers and the falling of leaves, not by fiscal calendars. He was surrounded by the sounds of nature, not the scratching of pens. But the silence was deafening. He had spent his life in service to a memory larger than himself, and in doing so, had created few memories of his own. He would sometimes see travelers on the road and wonder about their stories. He thought about the millions of names that had passed through his hands, soldiers, senators, slaves, and citizens. Each one had a life, a story full of love, loss, and adventure. His story was written in invisible ink between the lines of the official record. He was the man who made history legible, but remained illegible himself. Lucius Valerius Secundus died an old man, quietly and alone. His neighbors found him a few days later. No one in Rome noticed his passing. In the grand archives of the empire he helped maintain, his name appeared only once on his own certificate of service, filed away and forgotten in a dusty corner of the tabularium. A single line in a sea of records, a final, silent testament to a life spent in the shadow of history. A life given to the empire, which in return gave him nothing but a quiet, lonely end. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more tales from the pages of history.